I'm always impressed with the Yarchei Kallah participants. Brilliant people, experienced people who put the koiches into yet another interesting sugya. What's the best thing for a brilliant person to invest in? Says the Gemara, Haroitze sheyachkim, a person who wants to really use his brain well, yasek b'dinei momnus, he should get involved in dinei momnus, topics in the Gemara which discuss monetary matters. This is the place to use your brain, to sharpen your brain, and to come to a real understanding of the Heilige Torah. Haroitze sheyachkim, we want to become bigger chachamim. It's well known that Cheder children start, the first sugya is always a Gemara and Baba Kama. Why a Gemara and Baba Kama? Says Yisroel Salanta that natural inclination of a person is that you need to teach me Basa b'cholav. If you don't teach me how to run a kosher kitchen, how am I going to know a kosher kitchen? And the same goes for how to put on tefillin. But money matters. People imagine this is just plain intelligence, straightforward thinking, and the Torah hasn't really got what to say. Who would imagine, says Yisroel Salanta, that if I own a little chicken and the chicken goes next door and puts his head into a glass and makes a noise and the glass breaks, that I have to pay for it? The chokhmah of the Torah, the decisions of the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch of the Torah might be different to the way our intelligence would understand naturally. And part of our mitzvah is to change our way of thinking and accept that the Torah has what to say about each one of these monetary matters. So we start with children as soon as we can. The first way that they are introduced to Talmudic concepts is with Baba Kama, with Nizikin, with understanding that the Torah has its own approach. The Chochma Eliki, the decision of Hashem himself as to what's allowed and what's not allowed in money matters. Chaznish writes in Emunah B'tochen about the importance of learning Dinei Momnus and learning what the Torah has to say about it. Mishpatei Hashem emes tzodku yachtov, says Dovid HaMelech. Mishpatei Hashem emes, the mishpatim of Hashem, the money matters of Hashem, the approach of the Shulchan Aruch is emes, is completely emes. And if you don't understand that well with your own human intelligence, tzodku yachtov, go and learn another Gemara and another Gemara, see what the Rishonim say about it. Tzodku yachtov, when you have the whole picture, the whole panoramic view of what our Torah has to say, then you will appreciate Mishpatei Hashem emes, how correct and right the money matters in Shulchan Aruch are. Tosfos Yom Tov says in the Psicha to Baba Kama that Chazal placed Baba Kama, Nezikin, is early on in the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Nezikin, Kodshim Taharos, because of the importance. Chazal encourage us. We want you to learn Nezikin before you learn Kodshim and Taharos. This is relevant to us daily, how to run our lives in a kosher manner. It's true, we have a mitzvah to do ishtadlus for parnasa. We are obligated to do so. The Torah gave us a mitzvah to do so. We have to put our efforts into trying to create money, to create wealth, to be able to live and have a livelihood. But, says the Pele Yoetz, so often a person can be doing something, he doesn't even realize the Shulchan Aruch doesn't allow it, and he thinks he's doing ishtadlus, he thinks he's doing a mitzvah, and it's not allowed. On the other hand, we have to know there's things which the Torah allows, and what the Torah allows is incumbent on me to do because I have a mitzvah of ishtadlus. V'nikrav ba'al habayis ela Elokim im lo sholach yodoi b'mleches re'ehu. How can a person get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Not only when he davens can he come close to Hashem. Not only on Yom Kippur can he come close to Hashem. You're running a business and you're making wealth, but you're doing it in the way Hashem wants it to be done. V'nikrav ba'al habayis ela Elokim. Every one of us can get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu im lo sholach yodoi b'mleches re'ehu, on condition that we haven't in any way encroached on money that really belongs to somebody else. Yaakov Avinu, with all his great madrega, the Rambam calls him Yaakov HaTzadik. He's called a tzaddik. When is he called a tzaddik? When did he attain this status? When he worked for Lavan and he worked the way he was expected to do so, and he kept the Shulchan Aruch of Choshen Mishpat, which might be beyond what human intelligence would have demanded of him, that's when he's called Yaakov Tzaddik. And on the other hand, says Ohr HaChaim, a person whose business dealings are not the way they ought to be, the pasuk says, "Vatimoil ma'al ba'Hashem." A person went against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'kichesh ba'misoi. Every time a person does something which the Torah doesn't want him to do in money matters, is not only a ben adam lachaveir, it's also vatimoil ma'al ba'Hashem. He doesn't appreciate and he doesn't recognize that parnasa comes from Hashem. If parnasa ultimately comes from Hashem, then it's only going to come if I'm going to run my business the way Hashem wants me to run my business. This is the ultimate thing that we're going to be asked, every one of us, when we arrive at the pearly gates of Gan Eden. Nosasav anasato be'emunah. Did you run your business with an emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with an emunah that if I run it according to the laws of the Shulchan Aruch, that's where I'm going to be matzliach? Bo Chabakuk ve'amidon alachas. Chabakuk said there's one important thing in this world when you run your business, and that's emunah. Do you appreciate, do you believe that every penny I'm going to make, I will only make if it's from the way Hashem wants it to be? Particularly, we are Zeicha now, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to be learning together this very interesting and very important sugya of Yored Le'umnas Chaveir. What does the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch have to say about competition? What's fair, what's not fair? Where can I open a store, where can I not? How can I attempt to get more clients? What's the din of competing for a job, competing for a position? Brand names. Is there a person allowed to open another business? What about the name of a business, the name of a brand, the name of a Hasidus? If I want to use the same name, am I allowed to do so? Is this something which is inherited? Is it not? These are very, very important sugyas. And these are the base of our emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The pasuk says, "Shoifech dam ha'adam, dama yishofech." One person kills another, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will kill the Reitzeach. There's a very famous story brought in the Sefer Tirosh V'Yitzar over 100 years ago of a person who did unfair competition and because of that affected somebody else's livelihood. He was called into his Rebbe, and the Rebbe took out the pasuk, "Shoifech dam ha'adam, dama yishofech," and he said to him, he warned him that it says in the Sefer Heichal HaBracha from the Kamarna on this pasuk, "Shoifech dam ha'adam," is referring to somebody who competes in an unfair manner and in that way closes down somebody else's business. That's called Shoifech dam ha'adam. The other fellow doesn't have a livelihood anymore, and the oynish is unfortunately there in the Torah. Dama yishofech. Hashem takes away his life. And this is exactly what happened, said the Tirosh V'Yitzar. Unfair competition can have dire consequences. Rachmana litzlan. The Chofetz Chaim writes in Sfas Tomim, he brings a Gemara, El Shol vel Beis Adomim ala shehemis es ha-Givonim. Shol is held to blame for the fact that the Givonim didn't have parnasa. Why? Because he killed Noiver Kohanim, and as a result of that, the Givonim, who were employed until then in providing for them, they lost their livelihood. Says the Gemara on Baba Kama, if I affect somebody else's parnasa, even with a groma, I didn't touch him, I didn't speak to him, but inadvertently I did something which wasn't allowed by the Shulchan Aruch, that's a terrible criticism. And, says the Chofetz Chaim, the effect that it has on that person, and on his children, and on all generations, all that the person is held responsible for in the din of Shamayim. We have the zchus, Be'ez Hashem, we want to learn together what our holy Torah has to say about competition. We want to learn a Gemara in Baba Basra, very important Gemara. The Gemara differentiates and says that in many cases I'm allowed to open a store, although it competes with an existing store. And the Gemara asks the kasha, on the other hand, it says mufurish, that if there's one person who's already put his bait into the river and he wants to catch some fish, I'm not allowed to put in my bait and get some fish. What's the difference that a store is allowed and the bait of fish is not allowed? And there's a major machlokas in the Rishonim. to understand the answer of the Gemara with incredible, practical, relevant ramifications. So we need to learn the Gemara, and we need to understand the Chochmah Elekis, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. What's fair competition is allowed, is expected, is a mitzvah v'shtadlus. And what's not fair is not allowed and won't net you a good result at the end of the day. That's one sugi that we need to learn Be'ez Hashem very well together. And the other is a sugi in Kiddushin Daf Nun Tes, which is the topic of Oni Mahapich B'Charora. There's an Oni, a poor man, who's on his way to pick something up in the street. Let's assume this to be Hefka, has no owner, and I see him on the way and he's sauntering along, and I run ahead and I took it before him. And that's not allowed. And that also needs to be defined. When is it not allowed and when it is allowed? And then, of course, when we've learnt the Gemara Baba Basra and we've learnt the Gemara in Kiddushin, then we need to know how these two fuse together. Each question needs to be looked at from two angles, from the angle of the Yored Lu'um Noseh Shel Chaveiroi in the Gemara and Baba Basra, and from the angle of Mahapach B'Charora in the Gemara and Kiddushin. This is the incredibly geschmacka sugya which we're looking forward to learning together, and Be'ez Hashem coming out clear in the halacha l'maisa of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do in our business, and in this way we will be zoicha to run our businesses correctly, to incredible siyata d'shmaya in our businesses, and atzlocha in everything that we attempt to do.